2026 might be one of the worst years to build a PC. Even looking back on the GPU shortage of 2020, things are looking pretty bad at the moment in terms of the overall pricing. So, what does the average gaming PC in 2026 actually look like? Looking at some recent stats, it honestly explains why 8GB of VRAM is still such a massive argument, why 1080p still matters a bit, and why it's annoying to run new games. One of the biggest factors right now, and what everyone's really talking about, is RAM prices, because building a cheaper PC right now is really difficult. It's easier and better to hold on to older systems, and for example, a platform like AM4 is still going quite strong because of this. So today, I want to have a look at what the average gaming PC would look like from real Steam data, add some context around it, what's happening in 2026, and what does it actually mean for us. Now, there is a good way to save some money, and it's by purchasing cheaper Windows keys from a site like Keysfan.com. Just a quick word from our sponsor, Keysfan.com, for cheaper Windows and Office license keys. Keysfan.com are offering 52% off Microsoft Windows licenses using code BEZ52 for Windows 11 Pro, Home, LTSC, LTSC Enterprise, IoT, Windows 10 if you'd like, and you'll be getting 52% off. Just because we've been working for a while together as well, they're also offering 66% off Microsoft Office licenses as well. As we can see, if you use code BEZ66, you'll get 66% off an Office license. They also offer Microsoft Office and Windows license bundles using code BEZ66. It's great to see that they're continuing on to work with me, and I'm happy to say that they are consistently pretty solid. So let's go ahead and see how it works. So we're going to go ahead and click buy now on the Windows 11 Pro key. I'm going to add it to cart. I'm going to view cart. Then we're going to go ahead and apply our discount code. This one is BEZ52. I'm going to go ahead and apply the discount. Then we're going to proceed to checkout, fill out our information. We're going to press place order. And as you can see here, they offer multiple payment methods. So they include PayPal, credit card, and obviously the best way to go here is probably PayPal. So we're going to use that method as it's the most secure. Keysfan.com offer pretty solid customer service, and I've tested them multiple times in the past. So if you guys want to get a cheap Windows key, head over to Keysfan.com and use code BEZ52 for 52% off Windows operating system licenses, and code BEZ66 for 66% off Office licenses. I'll see you guys there at Keysfan.com. Memory is where it gets quite interesting in 2026. According to the Steam hardware survey, the most common amount of RAM is still 16GB. So honestly here, nothing crazy, but context matters, right? And RAM prices have gone up again. So of course there'll be a trend towards systems with lower amounts of RAM, but I would say we can't exactly correlate the 16GB of RAM to the RAM shortage, but it is the most popular according to the Steam hardware survey. You know, DDR5 RAM is the problem and is the standard for new platforms, but yeah, pricing has just been so unstable and crazy, a lot of people just can't afford it. I see a number of people sticking with one 16GB stick, and honestly that can be a good option, especially if you want to upgrade later on. You also don't exactly need the highest speed kit of RAM, and you can go cheaper, for example if you're choosing an X3D chip like the 7800 X3D, so that's another option to get things cheaper, but I do have a really good piece of advice coming later. So what does the average PC actually look like? And let's go over this a little bit quickly. So we have Windows 11 at 70.44%, leading that on is Windows 10. For system RAM, 16GB is the most popular at 41.57. Then next up is 32GB. For the physical CPU cores, as we can see, 6-core is the most popular, which doesn't surprise me, but very closely to that is an 8-core CPU, which doesn't surprise me at all, considering that 8-core CPUs are not that hard to come by, especially on Intel platforms. For the video card, the most popular one is the RTX 4060 laptop GPU, but if I expand this, of course we can see the next most popular and probably the desktop one is the RTX 3060, which is either an 8GB or most commonly a 12GB card. And next up from that would be the RTX 3050, which is quite interesting to see here, and then the RTX 3060. So all 8GB cards here mostly. And our next one is for VRAM, which follows on from before. So 8GB for our most popular, but trailing behind that is 16GB very closely. Then we head over to 12. I think VRAM is probably one of the most debated topics alongside RAM, which is interesting because they're both memory. So kind of goes to show that, you know, 8GB is still what a lot of people are using, but yeah, I mean, it would be much better to be on 12 or 16 as you get a little bit more of buffer room. The most popular display resolution is 1080p, which doesn't surprise me in the slightest, then 1440p, and then 4K. So nothing too surprising there. And another interesting stat here is processor usage by manufacturer. So Intel is at 54% and AMD is at 45.99%, so 46%. And honestly, it depends on what budget segment you're in, and as well what you're going to actually use the processor for what you should be recommended in terms of buying a processor. So where does that lead us, and what's my actual take here? You really need to build your computer on what you need it for. If you already have an 8GB GPU and you're playing at 1080p, I mean, you should be fine. If you have something like an RTX 3070, you don't really need to panic. And honestly, one of the best pieces of advice that I can give is when your stuff starts to feel old or games are not running like you want them to, as long as it's not an optimization issue, it's probably time to upgrade. Now, of course, you can leverage stuff like upscaling or frame generation where possible to extend the life of your GPU or your system as a whole, but sometimes you're just limited by what your system can provide as an output for your gaming experience. For something like RAM, you know, 16GB is still fine, and I have a big piece of advice here in just a second. I know I've been leading you guys on for so long on that, and I think 1080p honestly is still good enough, and 1440p is definitely a sweet spot in my opinion. It looks quite sharp, the panels are quite cheap to buy, and there's a lot of cheaper OLED 1440p gaming monitors now. I feel like this is the reality of gaming PCs in 2026. RAM is expensive, GPUs still feel limited in terms of VRAM, and not everyone has their dream PC. So I'm going to show you my PCs now and why there is something quite interesting with them. This is my dream PC over here. So it's got a 7800X3D, 32GB of DDR5 6000 CL30. It's got an RX 9070 XT and more storage than I can even say on camera. All the specs will be on screen in any case. So a PC like this is really expensive and I don't think is actually that relevant in 2026. While you could build something like it with a 7800X3D from AliExpress, I do have another video on that, I definitely wouldn't advise to do this. I can't even afford this PC anymore. It would be too expensive for me to make. So what do you do instead? Just behind that computer, I have a budget PC, which was actually pretty easy to make. This one has an i5 12600KF, 16GB of DDR5 RAM, which I will come to in just a second, an RTX 3070, and as you can see, it's an all-white build. Well, as much as I could make it to that, but here's the real kicker, and it intros another video. The RAM that you're seeing inside there is laptop RAM, and yep, it's working in a desktop computer. This is just one of the ways that you can save so much money when building a computer for DDR5 in 2026. Of course, you can build a system with DDR4 memory instead, such as an AM4, build like with a Ryzen 5 5600 instead to save money, but this way we at least are able to use DDR5 memory. Now this should work for AM5 and Intel processors that are on DDR5 as well, and as you can see that's an Intel processor in there. I will have another video coming out soon on how to buy an adapter, as there is one specific one that works a bit better than the one I have, and whether it works properly. Now I've had this system for about a week and a half now and it's still going pretty strong, so yeah, we'll have another video coming out for that. And as you can see, my PC over there, the budget one, is actually quite similar to the average PC of 2026. So we will be benchmarking that PC later on, as I think it's pretty close to what we have for the Steam hardware survey. That about sums up the video. I know it's been a long one. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Check out wirestick.org for some more awesome content, but other than that, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!